So no matter who we become as adults, from the kind of infinite possibilities, we all start out in the womb. From there, if we travel down the birth canal, we pick up bacteria that start the growth of our gut flora, which, along with other bacteria, will come to outnumber our human cells 3 to 1. This transformation into not just one single entity, which is what a person appears to be on the surface, but instead a vast and diverse community of microorganisms, which is collectively known as the microbiome, that doesn't stop at birth. So we continue to pick up bacteria from all the people that we come into contact with in the first few months of our life. And more we're recognizing that bacteria, many of them have very positive effects. So we think of bacteria as something sort of yucky, but actually it's really important and beneficial for us to have. So all the people around us help to create our microbiome. And that's that set of microbes that will shape our immune system. It will give us vitamins and energy. It will help calm inflammation. They, our little microbial community, will work together to defend us against their harmful microbial counterparts, which are the ones that cause illness and disease. So each of us is actually a community of these microbes and our human cells, created not just by our mothers, but also by the people around us. But when we're used to seeing ourselves as entirely distinct, independent, and singular creatures, understanding ourselves as an ecosystem can be a new way of seeing. So the magic of forming into a self, into a person, it's continuously communal. We just don't always see that in the kind of vivid and daily ways it actually takes place. It's in the context of the entire world that we form into people day by day. So just like our microbiome was created through the contributions of people all around us, our cells are every day being shaped in the global commons. So red blood cells live for about 4 months, while white blood cells live on average more than a year. Skin cells live for about 2 or 3 weeks. Colon cells have it rough. They die off after about 4 days. The body is this amazing, regenerating ecosystem. And of course, that regeneration is dependent on the air that we breathe, the water we drink, and the food that we eat. So the air here contains CO2 that was emitted not just in Port Alberni or Alberta, but in Azerbaijan or Abuja. You pick up an apple, and the tiny sticker says New Zealand. A peach might come from closer to home, say the Okanagan Valley, but it was picked by a temporary foreign worker from Guatemala. What great evidence of the role that others play in helping us become ourselves, that people we will never meet grow, harvest, and pick the food we eat. So individualism, simply defined as the privileging of freedom for individuals over the collective, is one important story. And there are definitely positive manifestations of that story. But it's only one story about what it means to be human. And as Unitarians, part of our strength comes from our interest in many different stories about what it means to be human. So we're also interested in the ways that we individuals are woven into the interdependent web of existence, our 7th principle, and in the implications of that interdependence for a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, our 6th principle. So when Vice President J.D. Vance says that you have a duty to care for your family more than you care for your neighbor or your community or the rest of the world, we might question that logic. I don't know if folks heard about this week, because the reason why the MAGA doesn't like Pope Leo, the new Pope, is that when J.D. Vance said this, Pope Leo went on social media and said that that was wrong, and that that wasn't actually the philosophy of the Catholic Church, that there was a hierarchy of care. So MAGA's angry at him for that and other reasons. But we might know as Unitarians that we question that logic too, right? So if we know, for example, that illegal deportations without due process can have ripple effects for us too, and we know that a rich spiritual and ethical life for us as individuals depends on working for justice for others, both seen and unseen, as well as security for ourselves and our immediate families. So I might disagree with J.D. Vance that my care for my family means caring less about others. However, becoming a parent did make me reach a new level of ability to put another person first. So after my son Avery was born, it made me rethink the golden rule. You know, the rule that, according to Karen Armstrong, exists in some form in every single religion. I think the best version of the golden rule for me personally now is not do unto others as you would have them do unto you, but rather do unto others as you would have them do unto your child. When my son was a baby, I would have these kind of swept away moments as a parent where I just couldn't believe people weren't stopping in the street to marvel at what a miracle he was. Like, I wanted to be like, look how long his hair is getting, look how he crinkles his nose when he smiles. I think it was a lot of sleep deprivation in the world at the time, in hindsight. But it did make me think about our first principle as Unitarian Universalists, respect for the worthiness and dignity of every human being. And I thought about how I could learn to marvel at other people's humanity in the same way that I marveled at my child's humanity. So I thought about how to respect the worthiness and dignity of each person, even when they no longer manifest that outward vulnerability and purity of children. And I thought about remembering that every human being is someone's child. So recognizing our interdependence, I also recognize how nonsensical it is to even believe that there's some way I could exclusively prioritize my child's needs over the needs of others. Avery exists in a community with other kids, a community that's global. He breathes that CO2 produced in China too. So while my motivation for fighting climate change might be strengthened by the special relationship that I have with my own kids, I do have more visceral and immediate compassion for them. But it's for all kids that I'm fighting. And as soon as I start investing in the story that there's a trade-off between our well-being and their well-being, the kids on the other side of the world, or maybe just the kids who don't have Canadian passports, I lose touch with my humanity, the exact kind of humanity that makes me a deeply loving mother to my own kids. So that's what I mean by Unitarian Universalist family values, that we recognize how interdependence shapes us, right from the earliest moments of our lives. I put a quote in the blurb for today from Karen Armstrong where she says, "The family is a school of compassion because it is here that we learn to live with other people." Now, of course, for many of us, the family was a school where we learned about compassion through its absence. I want to really thank Amanda for what she lifted up during Joys and Concerns. It's such an important part of the story of today. So for many of us, Mother's Day brings with it some pain. For mothers who were or are physically or emotionally absent, for the different experiences of mothering that we feel we missed in so many different ways. And I want to honor those experiences again for another moment. Let's just take a deep breath together. So sometimes it's in our UU communities that we get the chance to unschool what we learned in our family. If we didn't learn justice, equity, and compassion in our families, here we can learn it. If we didn't learn our inherent worthiness in our family, here we can learn it. If we didn't find acceptance in our families, here we can find it. So we can aspire to be an ongoing school of compassion. In her amazing book, which is called Breathing Space, a Lutheran minister named Heidi Newmark tells a story about lactating through her clergy robes when she was up on the pulpit. I'm glad you're laughing because I was hoping you could imagine the kind of combination of horror and humor that she tells this story with. And she observes that this thing that happened, lactating through her robes, would make many people say she's unfit for ministry, or even that all women are unfit for ministry. But in her community, which was mostly Puerto Rican and African American families, she gets embraced in her role as a mother. And like all lactating mothers, she was melting her own body fat, whether she likes it or not, to produce breast milk for her baby. Her milk was changing daily to meet her baby's needs. If her baby were sick, her body would produce antibodies to fight his infection. Her body would know to do this because receptors in the mammary glands read the baby's saliva. To feed the baby's microbiome, her milk would contain over 150 different sugars that babies can't even digest. Breast milk keeps hundreds of thousands of organisms alive to maintain the right bacterial balance in a baby's microbiome. So this is a deep and very foundational experience of empathy and altruism. But what I find inspiring about it is not that it gives mothers a unique relationship to compassion. I think what's inspiring and instructive about it is the evidence that it provides that being human means adapting to each other, profoundly, subconsciously, and continually. So even for those who aren't parents, family, however we define it, is where we learn to navigate the terrain of individuality versus community. Ideally, we can fluidly cross back and forth between these two experiences of being a self, recognizing and then embracing that the self we are is actually made by these communal experiences. So the question is not about whether prioritizing the individual or the community is the right choice. The question is about how do we integrate those two concerns. So learning to see that fluidity, that interdependence that creates ourselves, it requires some subtlety in our culture. This is not really the story that we're offered most of the time. So it's like learning to see time and space the way that physicists see them, as space-time, a dynamic relationship. Working on practices like compassion gives us access to those moments when we see that relationship clearly, when the boundary between self and non-self dissolves. So we need compassion, generosity, and care that warmly validate the experiences of others and firmly defend the rights of the self as the most integral part of the collective. So patriarchy, capitalism, colonialism, insert your least favorite ism here, school us in separateness. But compassionate action is our unschooling. So as I've said before, when I've read our 8 principles as Unitarians to people, I've often had them kind of shrug and say, well, everyone agrees with these, or these aren't very controversial. But I don't think that's true. I think lots of people do disagree, and we can see that in our politics. And even for those of us who do agree, actually living by these kind of principles like justice, equity, and compassion is hard work. It's like the hard work of mothering. So we might strive to practice justice, equity, and compassion, to accept others, to recognize their worthiness and dignity, and we constantly fail. But we try again, and we need communities like this one, beloved communities that help us to reorient towards our highest aspirations, our most principled selves. I hope that you'll join me now in a few minutes of meditation. Dick's going to play something to guide us through it.